Coming up on today's BWI Daily Recruiting Show edition, Ryan Snyder is back to talk the latest Nittany Lions recruiting news. Penn State obviously getting ready for Purdue, and the focus is on that. But we're going to turn it to recruiting for just a little bit today, and we're going to get to it right now on the BWI Daily Show. He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel. It's the final BWI Daily Recruiting Edition for the month of August, Ryan, and that means one thing and one thing only. Penn State football is almost back to taking the field. The Nittany Lions open up at Purdue, another year on the road to start Big Ten play, and of course their 2022 season. Kickoff set for 8 o'clock on Fox on Thursday. But we're going to get into recruiting. Obviously, you can check out the BWI site, bluewhiteillustrated.com, and also youtube.com/bluewhiteillustrated for practice video, James Franklin updates, and much more as the week continues, Ryan. But Monday was a busy day for Penn State. They had their only availability of the week from a media perspective. They opened practice for a bit, and they also lost out on a key commit who was maybe at one point trending toward Penn State, maybe at one point trending away from Penn State, and it's Kaveion Keys. He ends up picking North Carolina yesterday, a very talented linebacker out of the Mid-Atlantic. So at this point, what do we know? Is this something that could drag out a little bit? Could Penn State get its foot back in the door here, or where do you think this goes, and why did it play out the way it did?
Yeah, so I would say that as of late last week, there was a lot of people close to Verena, which is this high school in Richmond, kind of suggesting that Penn State might be the school here. But Kaveion and his family were never really saying that. And so that dragged out throughout the weekend. And, we got to Sunday evening, and it's still – there was a lot of people who really thought Penn State was going to be the school. And it's just hard to say because I don't know who exactly was telling them this. I get the impression it was, the coaches at the school. But, I just know multiple people were suggesting that Penn State had a real chance there. And then once we got to about Monday midday, it was becoming clear that he had spoken with some people and that it was going to be North Carolina. But this is certainly going to be a recruitment that should stay open, or I don't know. I guess it's not open, but I don't know if it's completely over with. I mean, he's talked about taking visits to other schools. Texas A&M came in and offered late last week, and I think it gave him a lot to think about. And Auburn came in too. I'm not sure if that's really going to have a big impact on him moving forward, but we'll keep an eye on him. I mean, the one thing I just would say is Keys has talked about visiting a lot of schools over the last 6 months, and those visits never happened. Of course, people might remember he was supposed to visit Florida in July, and that never happened either. So we'll see. He's already taken his official visit to Penn State, so that would require Kaveion to come up to Penn State on his own. And there were at least 2 or 3 times where I know he's on that visitor list. I know Penn State was expecting him throughout the spring, and he wasn't able to make that. So I'm not very positive on him coming back for an unofficial visit on his own. Just like I said, I mean, there were multiple opportunities for that, and it didn't happen. The only time he got on campus was when Penn State, paid the way and got him there. So we'll see. I don't see him. I can see him visiting A&M and maybe some other things happening, but I don't. At this point, I don't see him ending up at Penn State.
So Keys, the number 314 player in the class of 2023, according to the On3 consensus player rankings, number 28 linebacker, number 5 player in the state of Virginia. As you mentioned, Ryan, he commits to North Carolina on Monday, but it's a recruitment that certainly feels far from over. So we'll keep you posted if things change there. As best as I can tell, I think he only used 2 of his official visits, so he has a couple left to take if he wants to, but time will tell there. He'd have to pay his way to come back to see the Nittany Lions, and that doesn't seem likely at this point, but you never know. It's recruiting. That's why we follow it year round. So time will tell there. Ryan, you were able to hit the road last week to check out some high school prospects. On last week's show, we discussed some of the names to know and games to know. So I don't know where you want to open the bidding here, but certainly a good week for Penn State players that are committed in this class and were able to show out for their first time as high school seniors. Why don't we kick it off with Tony Rojas? Start there. Obviously, he was a Week 1 Performer of the Week by Charles Power, the On3 National Director of Scouting and Rankings. So he certainly caught the eye of the folks that do our rankings, and certainly the tape and everything else tell you why.
Yeah, I mean, they played Wakefield, beat them 52-14. Wakefield's not much of a powerhouse program in Virginia or anything like that. I think they had a coaching change a couple years ago, and they're kind of just getting their feet underneath them there. But 52-14, as you can see from the score, it was certainly a blowout, but Rojas was still pretty impressive nonetheless. 6 touchdowns in just the first half. That's always an eye-raising stat. He also had, I believe it was 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. Playing linebacker, playing that hybrid kind of stand-up defensive end role. Looks like it was more so kind of a stand-up D end than a true linebacker. And in my conversations with Fairfax's coaches leading into the season is that he was going to play more linebacker this year. So I'll just be curious to see how that shakes out as we watch him. I'm trying to go down there to see them play Lake Braddock, I believe it is, which is mid-October. I think it's actually maybe like the night before the whiteout game, which will make that a little bit tough. But definitely want to go down there and see him at some point. I mean, we've known Tony Rojas is one of the best athletes in this class. He proved that last year when he came up in camp, put up some crazy numbers, and then his recruitment goes and blows up. But good first week there. But I mean, it was mainly him running the ball, and obviously we or at least myself, I want to see him as a linebacker because that's where his position would be at the next level. But still an impressive week nonetheless, and curious to see how Fairfax does this year, man. Fairfax has never been like a powerhouse program, and since Tony's gotten here, they've continuously kind of kept growing as a program. So this should be a good year for them.
Yeah, when you look at his tape, obviously, as you mentioned, it's a lot of running back stuff. So you can get the sense of what kind of linebacker he could be for Penn State in the athletic sense and the running sense and things like that. And of course, as you mentioned, anyone who followed his recruitment or his career to date knew that was something that was going to take him a long way, both as a high school player and as a recruit. And it certainly has so far. So for Rojas, like I said, a great start to the week. And for Penn State, obviously, I'm sure they're very happy to see him succeeding, even though, like you said, most of his clips were on the other side of the ball. Where you want to head here next, buddy? I know you got a list of stats for us to pour through here today.
Well, I mean, I think everybody kind of watched King Mack and Conrad Hussey on Saturday.
Right.
That was a really fun game. I don't know how much you got to watch of that, Greg, but Prep and St. Thomas Aquinas went at it and back and forth and back and forth. I think anyone who watched that game was pretty entertained. And I watch a lot of high school football, and high school football is not always very entertaining at times. So whenever you get a game that keeps your focus and it's fun to watch, I'll always keep my eye on that. But Mack totaled 6 tackles in that game. Conrad Hussey had 4, I believe. I may have missed 1 or 2. I was trying to track him at the time while watching a toddler, so I may have missed 1 or 2 there. But those were the count that I had there. 6 for Mack and 4 for Hussey, and I thought it was a good performance for them. There wasn't too many times where they were like challenged in the passing game or anything like that. Especially Hussey, because I mean I think Hussey's a little bit more of a potential cornerback, while Mack can maybe be a nickel or safety. We'll see how things end up there, but both are listed as a safety for now, and that's where I expect them to at least start for Penn State. That's true. I know some people think like Hussey's going to be a corner, but Penn State truly sees both of them as safeties right now, so we'll see. Matthias Barnwell had a good week. I think it was, what was it? I know he had 1 touchdown pass for, I believe it was about 27 yards, handful of tackles, 3 tackles for loss. Riverbend, they crushed Spotsylvania. So I don't know a whole lot about Spotsylvania, but I think most expected Riverbend to get off to a big win there. I know they beat them pretty good last year as well.
I was going to say the only thing I know about them is what I watched last year of Matthias Mega Barnwell's tape. So yeah, not a huge shock here, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to see. I mean, he's another one I really want to go see play defensive tackle. Just I like to get a better feel for that, because we watched him so much as a tight end the last couple of years that I just haven't watched him a ton. And yeah, we watch highlight tapes and all that, but just highlight tapes only tell you so much. You really got to watch a full game and see the mistakes, right? Because if we're going to grade guys, highlight tapes show you all the good, but you got to see the bad with it too to get a better feel for where they truly stack up. But good win there for Matthias Barnwell and Riverbend. Like I said, 49-0 off to a good start there against Spotsylvania. The game I attended. I attended a couple this week. Maybe we'll save them for the end, but I'll roll through.
Yeah, let me go back to one thing real quick, Ryan, before we move on to that. You mentioned King Mack and Conrad Hussey. You had a premium story update on those 2 guys over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, where it's just $1 for 1 year to read insider recruiting intel just like that, premium team updates and more. So I want to leave most of that for the subscribers. And of course, thank you if you subscribe here to the YouTube or to a podcast platform. And also, please remember, it's $1 for a year to subscribe to the website as well at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. But let's just get a broad overview of your sense with those 2. They're 2 guys that I think most listeners and viewers know have long been committed to Penn State, but have both players that have received offers from other schools and maybe were interested in seeing them or learning more about those or what have you. So now that you had a chance to maybe learn a little bit more about them, I know one of our colleagues got to catch up with him after that game. Any change of feeling or anything like that between the time before you read that interview and now?
When I'm not the one doing the interview, it's hard for me to say, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm just getting quotes here, and someone's calling me at the moment. Let me turn that off. Sorry, guys. Didn't want that ringtone going on forever. But here's what I would say. I mean, Mac admitted that Michigan and Miami are still, Michigan State, excuse me, and Miami are still pushing hard, while Hussey admitted that Florida State, Miami, Oklahoma, and Auburn are all pushing hard. I think he said Missouri as well. They both had positive things to say about Penn State. I've been doing this a long time. I think anyone who tells you in this industry, like fans read that, right? And they were very positive. And I know our fans are very excited about that, but just be careful with reading too much into quotes sometimes, especially because I wasn't the one that did the interview either. So I'd have to ask Joseph a little bit more if he had a little more inside info that they talked about, maybe off the record. But I think Miami is certainly going to be coming for Hussey. I think Oklahoma has real interest in Hussey, or at least I know Oklahoma did a few months ago. I'd have to circle back on that. I haven't dug on that, at least since, I don't know, maybe early mid-July. But Florida State, too, is another one I think is pretty serious with them. So they're going to have interest. I'd be kind of surprised if they don't pop up on a campus somewhere. Now, with that said, both of them also said that the one and only visit they really plan on taking right now is to Penn State for either the Whiteout game or the Ohio State. Actually, I think Max said he wants to come to the Michigan State game, which makes sense. You know, Michigan State was a school he seriously considered and is still after him. So we'll see. I don't want fans to put too much stock in it, but I want them to also read it and be excited about it and all that. I'm still kind of just 50-50 on those guys there. But I don't have a great relationship with them, Greg. I mean, you've talked to them, I think, more than I have. So, and I know the Aquinas coaches a little bit, but I just don't. I can point to 15 other guys in this class. It's like, yeah, I have a great read on these guys. These guys I've never had a great read for. We just get these random times where they're popping up on campuses and things like that. And, we're talking about Aquinas guys who it's not like there's a long history with that school there. So it just where will that go long term? I'm still very much TBD and kind of curious to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, both quiet guys. They don't really say a whole lot. If you check out the interview, you'd probably get that sense as well. That, I mean, they're straight shooters as far as I can tell, but at the same time, they're not. Some of the quotes you read are very long, and guys give a lot of good insight, and they're very outgoing and talkative. I get more of the sense these guys are just football players, in the sense that they're focused on the game, they're focused on their teams. Maybe the interview side of it and everything else is not their most favorite or most enjoyable part of the recruiting process, which is fine. There's a lot of guys like that, but to your point, it does make it hard at times to get a read on what exactly it is those guys are thinking as the recruiting process really rolls on here and as we get closer and closer to December. But all right, that was a quick tangent away from the rundown of games you went to, so let's go back to that.
Yeah, so I want to mention Jackson Smolik. They lost in their season opener 38-24 to the defending, I believe it's 4A or 5A state champions in Iowa, Southeast Polk. 25 for 37 for Smolik, not too bad. 283 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'd like to get a little more. I'd like to see his highlights a little bit more, or go back and watch some of that film. I believe that film is on YouTube, so that's a game I'd like to circle back and watch at some point this week. I will say I have booked a flight to Des Moines for 2 weeks from now. We're gonna watch Jackson.
It's a sentence I never thought I'd hear you say, but here we are.
No, yeah, I'm excited. I've been talking to people at Ankeny, who JJ Cole plays for, and then people over at Dowling Catholic all week. So I'm curious to go out there and see Iowa football for the first time. That's something I've actually never even been to Iowa for a Penn State game, so that'll be my first trip out there. But yeah, we're set to go out there, and I think if you're going to watch Jackson Smolik play a game, right, why not watch him play against JJ Cole, who was at one point a Penn State target, and then also after going to the Elite 11 and things like that, he's really kind of emerged as a verified, true 4-star player. Of course, he's going to Iowa State. Carmelo Taylor is another guy who had a pretty good week. Six receptions, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. Patrick Henry did lose to Brookfield, though, 35-27. There's some good film out for Jameial Lyons and Anthony Donko, Cooper Cousins. I would check all those guys out too. All that film is released. Some impressive pancake blocks from those guys. I would say Cooper Cousins and McDowell got a really nice win over Walsh Jesuit, who is a pretty quality. not like a powerhouse or anything in Ohio, but they did make it to
Right.
the quarterfinals last year, and they ran for a school record 665 yards. Of course, Cooper helped pave the way for that a good bit, so that was a good win for them. But the two games I attended this past weekend were Roman Catholic versus Wilson. That was, of course, to see Jameial Lyons and Tyseer Denmark. And then I went to the McDevitt Ematep Charter game on Saturday. I'll start with Roman. I thought Jameial Lyons played a really good game the other night. I mean, they asked him to do just so much. Not only is he playing tight end and doing different blocks. I mean, I think I saw him line up as a fullback at one point too. Maybe I might be wrong with that, but I think I maybe saw that. But really, just focusing on his defensive film, I was really impressed with Jameial because, man, they double teamed the quite a few times as well. And Wilson actually has some quality linemen too. Like, not guys that are going to play Penn State level, but I would venture to say that Wilson's offensive line is one of the better ones he'll face, maybe the top 3 or 4. They play LaSalle and St. Joseph Prep, and they play Archbishop Wood. Actually, that's a game I'd like to see if he faces up against Kevin Haywood. But they do have a decent line, and Jameial was pretty good. Like I said, 9 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. He had a big forced fumble there when Wilson was trying to get some momentum going. He also had this stop on 4th down right here. If you're watching on YouTube, right here, this was a massive play for them because Wilson was starting to get some momentum going, and yeah, they stuffed him on 4th and 1. I think they put a 260-pound tight end there too at quarterback to really try and get that 1 yard, and Jameial was a massive reason why they didn't. So was really impressed with Jameial's performance the other night, and just excited to see how he goes moving forward. If you had asked me this a year ago, I thought he would have been a defensive tackle because he's been sitting at that like 245 mark for the longest time, but he really hasn't grown much physically. I mean, he's still very muscular and all that stuff. Physically looks great, but he hasn't added pounds, which is a good thing because Penn State wants him as a defensive end, and I think that's where he's going to shape up when he gets here. But I'd also mention Tyseer Denmark was in this game as well. Tyseer had he only played the first half, and what sucked was first time Tyseer was, I mean, he had like 5 or 6 receptions, but a bunch of them were called back due to penalties. So, the stat line, it was like three receptions for, I think, 46 yards and a touchdown. His touchdown was a nice 38-yard slant across the middle where once he got open, then nobody was touching him. But he also had a few other decent plays, but they were all called back, and different penalties, holdings, clipping, different things like that. But he didn't play in the second half then. I'm not sure if it's an ankle injury or whatever. Maybe I think he just has a minor ankle injury that they're trying to be careful with, obviously, before they get into playing some of those bigger Catholic schools in Philadelphia. But Tyseer had a good night, though. But I was really impressed with Jameial that, he's the one I really want to focus on, and he played well. So one other game then, too, was just Bishop McDevitt, Ematep Charter. I was really curious to see Rico Scott, and I think Rico would be touched to tell you that was one of his worst games. I think he had 3 drops, 2 of which were for touchdowns. And they were at pivotal moments too. So it wasn't the best of games for Rico Scott, but you see everything there. I don't know if it was first game jitters or whatever it may be, but he stacked up against Kenny Woosley a couple of times, and Kenny had 1 or 2 nice plays. Rico ran some really good routes at times too, but just had a case of the drops the other night. I think he had 3 drops total in that game. And like I said, one would have been a massive touchdown in the third quarter when they needed it. I don't think McDevitt scored after that. And then there was another one midway through the fourth quarter that he dropped as well. And both were pretty nice passes from Stone Saunders. Stone Saunders didn't have a very good game either. 21 for 41. I think he had 280 yards passing and I think a couple touchdowns, but wasn't the best of nights for McDevitt. I will say there is a player, if you live in Central PA, you want to go watch a young up-and-coming player, Maurice Barnes. Keep an eye on this young man. He's a linebacker for McDevitt. I think he's legit, 6'2" or so, really moved well. This was his first game ever. I mean, he is a true freshman playing his first high school game against a team like Ematep, and he was very impressive. So that stood out to me as well. But yeah, I mean, I can't really say I took a ton out of that game. I really went there to focus on Rico. I really went there to focus on Kenny Woosley. And, both had a few good plays, but they just kind of neutralized each other the whole game, if that makes sense. There wasn't a whole lot of action to take away from it. But, good. It was fun. Fun weekend to watch. I'd say that Chambersburg Peach Bowl thing, I really hope they keep that going and build that up, because that would be a really fun event if they can keep it going. I'm happy I didn't go to Harrisburg St. Vincent Pilati, because that game ended up getting canceled because there was lightning in the area. They kept it going till 10 o'clock or so, but ended up canceling it. So that was the other big game on Friday night, but I went to see Roman instead.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I think it's important to take away from anytime we're talking or reading about stats that there's usually a lot more beyond the box score. And so there's
Of
no
course.
reason to ever get too wound up over, you can get wound up over a great night, but just remember that the bad nights could be great nights in a lot of cases too. Drop here, penalty there, what have you. So, Ryan, I guess we'll come down to home stretch here on the BWI Daily Edition recruiting show, the final one of August, 2 days before Penn State Purdue. As expected, not a whole lot going on the recruiting trail with Penn State being on the road to start the season. We'll see some visitors in town next week for Ohio, and you, of course, can follow who, what, when, where, and why in the confirmed list at bluewhiteillustrated.com. But any final thoughts here as we kick down the final portion of this show for the month of August?
Not really on the recruiting end. I mean, we'll get an Ohio list going together here in the coming days. Maybe by the end of the week, we can get something out there. But as I mentioned last week, Tom Lemming's coming up to do like a photo shoot that he does every year. And that should attract some good players. I wrote a story last week. Dominic Nichols is a top 2024 prospect from Maryland, is going to attend. Peter Gonzalez, I think, might be at that game too. He's a good 2024 wide receiver out of Pittsburgh. What I would do is throw it back to you, Greg. And I mean, we've got a couple minutes here. Purdue, Penn State, what's your prediction?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I haven't made it, but if I was going to, I'm going to save that for the Thursday edition of the PWI Daily Show. But maybe we'll get yours since you're going to be, I don't think you'll be on that show with us. But,
No.
ultimately, I think the one thing I would just say, Ryan, as we talk here on Tuesday is, when you hear and listen to everything, I know you got to do some player conference calls on Monday. I did as well, was able to listen to James Franklin and go out to practice. I just don't, it's cliche, but I just don't know if you're Penn State or a Penn State fan, I think you have to be happy with where everything is. You get through this point of camp, you've had no injury news to speak of, you've had no other issues really
There's
to
never
speak
injury
of.
news, but go on.
Well, yeah, right. No, I understand that.
There's
But well,
injuries. I mean, you've seen them
well,
out there, but go on.
Sure. Yeah. No, fair enough. But nothing season ending that they've had to talk about anyway is more of what I'm getting at.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I think you have to be happy if you're a Penn State fan with where they are at this point. I think they're saying and doing all the right things, and of course they are. But I think more than anything else, we're all just glad the wait's finally just about over because it's been a long off season of talking and changes and things like that, and here we are. Penn State's getting ready to finally open the season. So that's kind of where I'm at with it at this point. I'll be heading out to West Lafayette Wednesday with any kind of travel luck. T. Frank and I will be doing the daily from location on Thursday. So looking forward to that and looking forward to seeing Penn State back on the field.
What's the spread still? Is it three?
Three and a half. 3.5 and 54 on a total. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would have liked that number way more at 3 if you're betting Penn State. But although, I mean, 3 matters way more in the NFL than it does in college as far as the hook goes. But I like Penn State in this game. I mean, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, too. If you're going to play it, I like the over as well. I just think, like, Penn State secondary is going to be a strength. But I think Purdue can maybe take advantage of their linebackers, dink and dunk on them, and keep the ball moving. I think we can see a game. I don't know if both teams get into the 30s, but I could see a mid-30s, low 20 or mid-20s, high 20s kind of game, like a 34-28, something like that. But I do like Penn State in this game. I will take Penn State to win because this is a game they have to have. Because I think, I mean, personally, if you ask me, I think that Auburn game is going to be a little more difficult than this one. Penn State has usually played Purdue pretty well. Purdue has some things they got to replace as well. They lost some heavy hitters from that last year, so it'll be interesting to see that. But I think Penn State's offense is going to play well in this game. I do. I really think that they can reach 30 points. And if they do that, yeah, Purdue's going to drive the ball as well. Like I said, I think they'll 6, 7, 8 yard passes will be an issue in this game. But yeah, it'll be fun, man. If you're taking it, I like the over a little, maybe. Well, I don't know. I think I like the spread more than the over, if I'm being honest. But yeah, just excited to watch some games Thursday night. I won't be anywhere at any high school games this week, though. Go ahead.
Do you have any thought on if this game will have more of an impact on Penn State from a recruiting perspective? Of course, if it wins, because they're kind of in a feature spot on a Thursday night. There's not, for the most part, kids aren't playing high school games on Thursday night, or they could be on Friday, they could be on Saturday, but they're typically not playing on Thursday. You have your exceptions every now and again, but I mean, you have a couple other games on. Pitt, West Virginia should be a great one, but I mean, could this be very beneficial, or at least a little bit beneficial if Penn State gets a win here, or is that just does it have nothing to do with winning on Thursday and just winning? Period. I guess is what I'm getting.
I think all the schools they're recruiting against though are in feature spots. Like if you're comparing it to some other schools, you know, if you're comparing to the Purdue's of the world, which are on ESPN2 regularly, then yeah, maybe. But you're recruiting against Notre Dame, you're recruiting against Michigan, you're recruiting against Ohio State. Of course, two of those schools play each other. And what's the biggest game of the weekend, right? So you would argue,
Right.
you want to talk about feature spots. I mean, that's going to be the feature spot of the week.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, it's good. Yeah, everybody will be watching Thursday night. Although a lot of guys will be watching that Pitt West Virginia game too, if we're being honest. But
Right.
yeah, it's good from that perspective. But like that kind of stuff mattered way more in the mid '90s than it does now. I mean, and
Right.
shoot, man, half these recruits don't even watch games, guys. Like they just see highlights on Twitter, and that's really all it is. I mean, there's so many guys. It's funny, man. I used to try and reach out to guys after games. I don't know. This was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. Hey, what do you think of the game? This and that. And so many of them be like, I didn't even watch it. So,
Right.
Especially, you know, like a lot of guys have a game Friday night too. So on Thursdays, they'll do their team dinners. You know, a lot of teams do like a spaghetti dinner. They get together kind of thing on Thursday night. So I'm sure many of them will be watching it. Of course, the commits will be watching it. But it's, again, they're recruiting against powerhouse programs that are all going to be in the spotlight this weekend and for the next 15, 16 weeks.
Well, Penn State Purdue coming up Thursday night from Ross-Ade Stadium in West Lafayette. We'll be there. Ryan Snyder will be covering all the recruiting angles, whether they happen this week, next week, or what have you. And you can find all that at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Full game preview there, full game preview on your favorite platform channels coming up later this week, and also at youtube.com/bluewhiteillustrated. So for Ryan Snyder, I'm Greg Pickel. That'll wrap it up for this week's edition of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. We'll catch you next week.